how much is depression actually still affecting your life today? How much is it still a thing at the moment in your life?
It's definitely still there, not as prominent as it once was. But I still think it's part of my journey. It's still something that comes up every now and then. And I've had to use what I've learned in some of those harder days in some of my better days as well to maintain a good state. But definitely still there.
But better, or how would you say?
Definitely better. And when it does come, I think I know more now and I'm able to cope with it a little bit better. But there are also days where it completely takes over my brain capacity and I need a day to just do nothing. So not completely cured.
It's a journey. It's a process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I actually used to struggle in the past for about 6 years also with depression. So it's a feeling that I'm familiar with on how it can be. For you, actually, when did you sort of know that you were dealing with depression? Like, what were some of the first signs, or how did you discover that, oh, this is depression?
Yeah, I definitely started struggling for a little bit before I even knew that it was depression I was going through. I was around 14 years old, grade 10, when some of the signs started, and I didn't realize it in the moment. It was kind of like a retrospect look back thing, but some of the early signs were like I definitely was sleeping a lot more. I was really struggling with like emotional regulation. I couldn't deal with things as they were happening. And that made it hard, like, to get out of bed in the morning. I think that was one of the first things that clicked in my brain. It was like really, really hard to be excited about the day. And it was more than just, like a teenager not wanting to get up for school. It was like a deep desire to just not do anything. So there was a lot of like little things that built up for quite some time, but I didn't actually know that it was depression until a year and a half later. So I was about 15, 16 when I got diagnosed, and then it made sense. I'm like, oh yes, that's what depression is. I didn't have the knowledge or the words to really explain what it was, because it wasn't talked about back then either.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I started piecing things together, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Wait, you got diagnosed, but who sort of made a suggestion for you to maybe get a diagnosis, or to maybe check that? Like, was it your parents or the school, or how did you get? Yeah.
Yeah, it took a little bit of a crisis situation to get there. For some time, like, I was dealing with it on my own. I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't know how or didn't want to. But then it started turning into a little bit more of heavier things. I was turning to self-harm. I was having heavy suicidal ideation, and things just got really bad over that time. And it was actually someone I was dating at the time, my partner in high school, who had noticed some of these behaviors and called me out and said, what the hell's going on? And I kind of just broke down, and that was the first time I was open about some of the things I was thinking about and feeling. And that conversation happened, but then there was a situation a little bit after that where I was actively thinking about suicide and didn't know what to do, but I did voice it to him, and he kind of brought that to my parents' attention, and I was brought to the hospital. Very traumatic experience, but that is what like kickstarted my healing journey. That's what made me start seeing a therapist and go on medication and all that fun stuff. So it wasn't fun in the moment, but definitely what I needed. So that's kind of how that started, and then I got diagnosed and went from there.
Do you feel what your boyfriend writes back then was the right thing?
Absolutely. I still have a friendship with him today, and we've talked about it. I also had him on my podcast to talk about what that experience was like for him, because we were two kids, and I did put a lot on him at that time, which wasn't fair to him, but also I had no idea what I was doing. He had no idea what he was doing either. But at that time, I did have a lot of anger and hatred towards him for betraying me and going behind my back to tell my parents, but it's what saved my life. So can't thank him enough for making that decision. It just took me a little bit of time to realize that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking when you said that, like, that was pretty mature actually of him.
Very, yeah.
Just to see what was going on, or that there was something going on, and to also share it with your parents. So at that age, yeah.
Yeah. I think it was just a very heavy situation, and he felt he was dealing with it for that little bit of time between when I told him and then when the crisis situation happened. So I think a lot of feelings were building up for him as well, where he didn't know what to do, and then that happened, and he was like, no, this is beyond my capacity. I need someone else.
Yeah. Okay. When you look back, because it's sometimes, I mean, at least when I think about that time when I had my depression, it felt so confusing in a lot of ways of like how I came to have those feelings and well, thoughts about myself, like bad thoughts. Can you actually see for yourself what sort of built it up to you getting depressed? Like what events or, yeah.
Yes and no. There were definitely things going on in my life at that time. Like I was going through personal things. You know, I just started high school. That was a big life change. I had just lost my first grandparent around the same time. I was also a high-level soccer player, and I had first experienced my first major injury. So there was a lot happening, but I don't actually attribute the depression to any of those things. I think it would have happened regardless. I just feel like it was like part of my DNA that it would have happened, but maybe all those things contributed to it starting at that time, I'm sure, but I don't think anything was directly correlated.
Okay. What do you mean that it's part of your DNA?
I don't know. I've just always, like it's part of your chemical imbalance when you have depression and things. I always struggled with mental health as a kid, just in different capacities. Yeah. But that's when like the depression stuff started. There's genetic components in my family as well, where many other people have suffered. So yeah, I think it was just more of part of, it was going to happen anyway, regardless of what I was going through at that time.
Yeah, but it's true actually. Like the genetic component, like some people have a certain vulnerability more to develop certain mental health struggles or, things. So yeah, it can be exactly part of your genes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you were 14.
Yeah.
Did it get like a lot worse before it got better? Or was
Absolutely.
it like always just the same kind of darkness?
Definitely ups and downs. I would say like the bulk of it happened 14, 15, 16 in those early years. And then it was just like a major roller coaster until about, I was 20, 21. I think that's when things got not better, but more good than bad. That's kind of when that started. But yeah, and I think a lot of it did kind of go with like life transitions. I did move away for school. I was living 8 hours away. That was dealing with a lot. And like that's when things got really hard for me again on that like second roller coaster ride. But I still say today, like I'm definitely not cured. It's always going to be a part of who I am. Like there are days that I wake up and it's like not a good day, and I just have to like accept that. But yeah, roller coaster is how I describe it typically.
Yeah. Sounds tiring.
It is. But I think it has taught me a lot of just like learning to check in with myself and knowing what kind of day I'm going to have. Like when I describe it, I kind of say it's like a black cloud. Like I feel this black cloud coming over my head and I can physically see it when I wake up in the morning. So like in those really, really hard times, I kind of just started my day by like asking myself, is my black cloud here today? For the most part, it was there, especially at the beginning. And I didn't really know how to cope with it back then. I would just kind of accept it and be like, okay, whatever. But as I got more experience with it and started learning more, when I asked myself that question and whether the answer was yes or no, I kind of just developed different like coping strategies and things I could do based on my answer and how I was feeling.
Yeah, what do you feel besides, asking and checking in with yourself that helps you today to better manage depression?
I think routine is a big thing for me, like sticking to my routine. If it's a really crappy day and like my black cloud is there and I can't get out of bed, like sometimes I do just allow myself to have a day laying down and letting it happen. And I think that's been really important for me. But if I do have like a little bit of energy to give or something, it's kind of, you got to force yourself a little bit to just get up sometimes. And whether all you do that day is take a shower and then just go back and lay down or try to get outside for a little bit of fresh air. Sometimes it's just those little things that can get us out of that current headspace and that can do so much for us. It's just hard to actually take that first step.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with depression. Often, like, you might know what might be good for you, but actually doing it feels impossible sometimes.
Yeah.
Anything more that today kind of really helps you?
Yeah,
or through the years, right, that you learned of a tool or a technique or, I don't know, a way of thinking?
Yeah, I think like a coping list, or I like to call it a when in doubt list, has been really important for me. That kind of coincides with that. Check in with yourself in the morning. Like, I know there are some things I can do that it's like expanding your window of tolerance. So whatever it is that can get you out of your current mental and physical state, doesn't mean it's going to make you feel better right away, but it gives you like something else to think about, and that can change your mood completely. So for me, I know it's like taking a shower and blasting music. That can be really helpful for me. Getting out of bed and just like sitting next to my dog. That can be really, really helpful. Putting on your shoes and just getting outside, whether you go for a walk or you just sit there for a little bit. Like, I know there are certain things I can do that just require that first 2 seconds of effort to get you up and moving. And then once you do it, you're already putting yourself in a better state to hopefully feel better. So I think those little tools have been really helpful for me because I know I have my list. I know what things can work and sticking to those. But then again, on the days where you just can't do that, giving yourself grace and compassion and letting yourself having some of those down days are helpful, at least in my experience. I have to have those sometimes. And then when you're ready, you go back to that list and you push yourself to get back to hopefully a better state.
Yeah. I think allowing yourself to have some time for yourself when you're having that down day might be a really, really hard thing for many people. I don't know about you, right? But
yeah,
how have you learned to allow this?
It's tough, especially when, like, we're working, we got to go to school, we have responsibilities. Sometimes we just can't logistically do that. I think for me, at my current job, we have mental health days that I can take if I need them.
Oh, okay.
My social circle here knows my situation, and I kind of just say sometimes, like, I'm having a day, I need some space, leave me alone. Like, I'm just going to lay here. And they respect that, which is good, but I know they're also there if I do want to talk about anything. And yeah, kind of just like setting yourself up for whatever you need. If you need to have water next to you, if you need to just order food that day, you have no energy to make food, kind of like checking off all the boxes to make sure you're still taking care of yourself as best as you can.
Yeah.
But allowing yourself time. Like, sometimes I just need to sleep for a long time and not have anybody bother me. And then I wake up not always feeling better. I think it does take a little bit of effort to get you back to that state, but that time is crucial, especially when you're struggling.
I agree. Yeah. So talking about depression is not an easy thing for many people, right? is there anything you would say to someone listening right now who feels, in a way, sort of embarrassed that they might have depression?
Yeah, I've been there, and it's weird to be in this state now where I talk about it so freely. And I call myself a mental health advocate, I think because of what I went through, and I'm in much more of a comfortable space. But 10 years ago, I could not do this. You couldn't pay me money to do this because I felt so ashamed. I say now, like, I had a roof over my table, or a roof over my head. I had food on the table. I had opportunities. I was a high level athlete. I had friends. I had family. Like, I had everything, but I was still struggling. And I felt so ashamed to admit that. I'm like, what do I have to be depressed about? Really nothing. So the fact that I was struggling so much, it was so hard for me to even admit myself. I think that's why it was so hard to tell anybody else, because I couldn't even accept it in my own brain. But once I started letting people in, I started going to therapy and learning like what depression is. I think I became more aware of that. It's like, it's a mental illness. You can't really control it. Sometimes it just happens. And I got a little more comfortable and just like, who cares? Like, I'm like, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, and I kind of just let go of some of that shame and heaviness to it and just let it happen. And I think that was really crucial for me. So I think if you're struggling to tell somebody, I would say, like, I think listening to people who have gone through it and have come out on the other side, not always, but have gotten a little bit better, can be inspirational to know that, it's not all doom and gloom to talk about. It might be really hard at first, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And to just practice. So I have like this 3-step plan I talked about in my TEDx talk, but it's like acknowledgement, acceptance, and allowance. So I think for me, like, I had to personally acknowledge, like, this is what was going on with me before I was even able to accept. Like, I had to say out loud, like, this is depression. I am struggling. I am having thoughts of suicide today. I am like really having a bad day. And then that allowed me to accept it rather than try to fight it. Because I think putting on that brave face is what made things more difficult for me. And then once I was able to accept it, I allowed it to be there, which is some of those like darker days when you need them. But it had to start with me. And then I was able to let other people in. So I think some of that inner work, you're not going to be able to do it on a bad day, I'll tell you right now. But if you have like a slight window where you're feeling a little bit better, like, think about how you're feeling on those days. What can you do to better yourself, or to set things up for yourself to make it a little bit better on those harder days? And then it just becomes slightly 1% better every time. And then I think once you feel better about it, it's easier to talk about with someone else.
Yeah, your TEDx talk, I will actually link it up in the description of this episode, because it's a great one. Because you did it last year, right?
2 years ago now. Yeah.
2 years ago? Okay. So, well, not too long ago.
Yeah. Still wild that I did that. Like, another thing too, I can't imagine 10 years ago, like, me being in that situation now, talking about it on a big public stage, but very proud to do so.
You should be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because how does it feel actually today? How does it feel for you today to talk about depression, and also quite publicly, like on a stage and on a podcast and everything? Like,
it's weird. I think. Yeah, it's weird because I do constantly think about that girl who was like heavily struggling and who really could not go day to day. Like, that, it was a really, really tough period for a long period of time. So to be in the position I am in today, I think I've just tried to use it as like inspiration for other people that, dark days won't last forever. And I know what it feels like to be at that situation, in that headspace, and have all those heavy feelings. So I want to be able to show people that, like, you can get out of it. There are things you can do to make yourself feel a little bit better. There are resources out there that you can utilize. But there are also days, yeah, where I'm still struggling today and I have to pull myself away from this work because I do it so much. And I'm like, I am not in a position today to be inspirational because I feel like crap today and I need to just not do this.
Yeah.
So I think also being vulnerable and brave and honest on my social media platform as well. Like if I'm having a day, I'll say it. If I'm feeling great, I'll be very active in posting. But there are definitely like weeks at a time where I just sometimes can't post anything because I don't feel well.
When did you actually know that you were in like making progress? Like what were some of your first sort of signs that you were like, it's getting better, or I'm getting a better grip on these dark clouds?
I think when I was like actually excited to wake up and like see the day through, those were some of my initial signs when I would wake up and the dark cloud wouldn't be there and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I can feel good. I can have good relationships. I can go about my day and not feel all this heaviness that I've been feeling for so long. And it would like be a good day, then a bad day, then a good day, then a bad day. And I think the more good days that started happening, I would like see this pattern and I would just be like, it is possible to live without this dark cloud permanently. And I think that's why my like little check-in practice in the morning to see like, is my dark cloud here today? It really did change how I went about my day and how I felt about my day. Because if it was there, you know, it would be a really hard day. But if it wasn't there, I really learned to like take advantage of feeling good and like doing all the things, being productive, so that if the next day was hard, I would be fine. And like my logistics of my life, like all my responsibilities were still done and I could allow myself to do that. So I think, yeah, just more good days started happening and I started doing more. I started feeling better. And that was like my initial signs that I was doing something right and that I could live like back to my old self and be happy and all the good things.
Did you actually, I mean, I guess, right? Because I think you also said it, but so you went to a therapist, right? To a psychologist. How much do you feel that that was helpful for you to deal with depression? Because that's also first, I mean, yeah, depression is tricky in a lot of ways, but I know with some guys, some men, first of all, talking about it is very hard. And then secondly, seeking help, going to, for example, a psychologist is the next major blockage for so many, not alone guys, right? But for so many people in general. So I don't know, like, how was that experience actually of going to therapy for you?
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of self-stigma about it too. When they started saying like, you got to see a therapist, I was like,
Yeah.
no, like I don't need a therapist. Why? And like I felt very icky about it.
Yeah.
The process itself was actually pretty daunting. I think I saw like 7 therapists in a few months because I
A
didn't
few
like
months.
one didn't accept insurance. Like there were just so many different barriers to go through. And also I was at an age where I was seeing like a child psychologist, but then I was turning 18. I was moving away for school and like people wouldn't take me on. So, I mean, my mom went through a lot to try to get me to like see someone who would actually stick with me for that time I was home. And I had to connect with the person too. So it was like very emotional having to like open myself up to this person and then not like them and then have to do it again.
Yeah.
But therapy itself, like once I did find one that I connected with, I do think it was quite helpful for me to just have someone validate what I was going through and not make me feel like I was dramatic or just, you know, feeling things that I shouldn't have been feeling. Like she really did make me feel like I was going through something called depression and it was okay and it was a real thing that I didn't have to be ashamed of. And then the strategies she was able to give me, like I learned what a body scan was and how to really be in tune with yourself and creating lists and coping strategies. So I think it is helpful. You just really do have to find someone that you connect with and that you trust, because I've been back since and I've had some people I'm like, I don't feel comfortable talking to you right now. So yeah, it always will be, I think, a bit of a process therapy, but once you find one, I think it can be very, very impactful.
Yeah, it's a bit like dating,
Yeah.
You gotta try a few out sometimes to really find a fitting one, because feeling safe, right, with the person in front of you is such a major component in the therapy process, and that's not always with the first person. So I always feel it's a little bit unfortunate when someone said, I tried it, but I didn't like it, I didn't feel safe, and then they never tried again. They might just had the wrong person in front of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say definitely don't give up. And a little trick I learned is that you can ask the therapist that you were just talking to, like, for their notes. Like, if they took notes on your session and you didn't like them, you can say, like, can I please bring these to a new therapist, that you don't have to start from square one, and you can give it to them in advance so they can learn a little bit about you before you meet them, which is, I think, takes a little bit of the pressure off.
Right. And also having to, retell your story again can be a little bit, especially after 7.
Yeah.
After 7, that can be quite tiring, I would assume.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Have you tried any like antidepressants?
Yeah, I have been on and off for a little bit. I did go off them, but back on now. Zoloft. I think that also changed my life completely.
For the better, I guess, or?
Yeah, for sure. I think it really helped me regulate my emotions, and because I think I was always either way up or way down in ways that, like, I couldn't control and couldn't bring back to baseline. So that helped me just stay in the middle.
Yeah, it's a real journey, depression. So it's about trial and error.
Yeah, and finding small moments of joy can really go a long way.
Yeah, and yeah, for sure. And I do think hearing about stories like yours can potentially provide some support and hope, because hope is also something that can be easily lost when you're in a depression. But some hope that it might be different, as it is for you and for others. For anyone listening, is there any just last thing that you would like to say to them, or anything that you feel in general is very misunderstood about depression? Maybe those are 2 questions actually, but yeah, is there anything on that?
I'll start with the misunderstood one first.
Sure.
I think a lot of people think you can just, like, snap out of it, or, you're having a bad day, just get up, just do this. And it's not easy to do. So if you do have someone in your life, or you know of someone that is struggling with depression or having a difficult time, like, don't take that approach. Don't just use the tough love, because that's not always, very rarely going to work. I think coming at it from a place of compassion, like giving people a day if they need it, a couple days if they need it, to get back to themselves, but also giving them a little bit of, like, encouragement rather than tough love to, like, get up and do, whether it's one thing a day or something small, and those little things really will add up. So that would be my one thing I think is misunderstood, is that people think it can just be snapped out of, and that's absolutely not true. When feelings are that heavy and thoughts are that intense, it's very, very difficult to get yourself out of.
Yeah.
And then in saying that, my, like, piece of advice, or for anybody who might be struggling, is something I always say, is that there always is a light at the end of the tunnel, even if you can't see it right now. Because I think for so long I was searching for that light, and all I saw was darkness. But then I would have that, like, little moment of, like, oh, I knew I had soccer practice that night, and I love playing soccer, and I loved my teammates, and, like, that would make me excited, and I'd be like, that one small piece of light that got me through the day. And that was what I was, like, clinging on to. So I think, like, an actual, like, practice I did was, like, squinting to try to, like, see the light when all I saw was darkness. And that would be finding,
Squinting?
like, like squinting, like trying to find the light.
Yeah. Okay.
And like whatever that piece of joy is for you, like now it's knowing I'll see my dog later, or like whatever it is for you, like those small things that put a smile on your face, that make you feel something when you feel numb, like that can be so life-changing. And even if it's like 5 minutes that you get with this thing or whatever, really cling on to that and make time for it, because the more you feel happy, the more you feel joy, like the more you'll overcome this dark cloud. So there is a light if you're struggling to find it. Sometimes you just have to put in a little bit of effort to know what that is for you. But once you find it, hang on to it.
Agreed. Yeah. Angelica, thank you for sharing some of your journey, right? Like I said, I think hearing stories like this can really provide, or can be another light in the tunnel that someone is, in the dark tunnel that someone is going through right now. So thank you for taking some time.
Thank you for having me and for having these discussions. I think I agree. They can be very, very helpful and provide hope for those who need it.